So we're glad to have with us today David from Gregor, who is actually one of the key individuals advancing this SDC Plugathon testing events, as well as the Gemini SDPi and Fire program. So David, you're going to give us an update today on the Plugathons that we've done over the last few months, the one that happened recently, and where we're headed in the future. So take it away, David.
Yeah, very well. Thanks for the introduction, Todd. Yes, so welcome to my presentation, ORNet and IHE Germany SDC Plugathons, in which I will explain the scope and purpose of the SDC Plugathons and give an excerpt of the past Plugathons as well as some future work perspective. So the SDC Plugathon is like a workshop-based event under the flag of the ORNet Association and the IHE Germany. And yeah, as you can tell from the picture on the right, we are a horde of engineers coming together to pursue the establishing of interoperability between different SDC implementations. So the most famous service-oriented device connectivity specification. And yeah, with a goal of eventually being able to connect devices from different vendors to each other. So the meeting serves as a platform to find and fix shortcomings of the SDC protocol, which we definitely have. We agree on implementation details and options, make them mandatory then in the resulting SDPi supplement. And moreover, we're also going to formalize SDPi transactions, yeah, to be able to leverage them for the performance testing later on. So due to the pandemic and also in order to reduce expenses, because it's quite cost intensive to come together at such a large round, the meetings take place at virtual venues and yeah, on a bi-monthly basis. The events are documented on the conference page you see on the page on the slide below. Yeah, I can just open that up in a minute.
So this picture was from the first Plugathon.
Yes,
the good old days.
The good old days. So actually this, and I want to come to that also. This is just like one of the very informal Plugathons we had back then. And after that, COVID began and we have to switch over to yeah, virtual or partly virtual venues. And this is actually from 2019. Yeah, we can see a lot of familiar folks. My humble self on the left side of the picture. I'm here. There is Stefan Schlechting. We know them. Martin Kasperek, who is very well known in that round. Yeah, and some other guys. Yeah, and we evolved to a group that is now more settled, being able to productively work together. In contrast to what we did there.
Yeah.
No, it was also productive, but it was definitely different, and we made a lot of progress since then.
And it was having it, right? The first one, that was amazing.
Yep.
And I might also mention that within testing, Plugathons, as you said, were kind of more informal. Let's get together, let's sort out and focus on specific capabilities. But there's nobody grading you. There's no pass or fail. It's more, it's more than a hackathon, but it is similar. It's a Plugathon. But it lays the foundation for connectathons, as we'll talk about in a minute. So these are huge, and getting past that first one was amazing.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're striving for, getting ready to conducting the connectathons, and then hopefully in a way that we do not struggle with all the basic problems we could already erase during our Plugathons then. Yes, and hopefully we will be able, after COVID is under control, to meet in person again. But I'm pretty confident that will be possible, hopefully in 2022.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! We have the Plugathon #1 that took place about 1 year later. I think we had another informal event in between. Yeah, but then that was yeah, canceled due to the pandemic. And we were finally able to reconvene in October 2020, shortly before we had a hard lockdown in Germany. So yeah, we had this virtual venue. Already told it's because of the pandemic, and in order to reduce expenses, we came together. We came together partly virtual, partly in person, yeah, we connected all the computers and started coding. We had an on-net hosted virtual private network that allowed us to exchange data, not only by using TCP, but also more importantly, by leveraging UDP multicast, which is one of the essential building blocks of SDC. We use the soft ether VPN, which works quite nice. We have Markus Koni, who's responsible for providing access information and user accounts. So feel free to contact him if there is any chance that you will ever appear at one of the publicly open SDC connectathons. Yeah, we had this first meeting and created a test sequence for the first time, then for the purpose of covering most of the functionality that is specified by SDC. So before that, we were just randomly trying to connect devices. And it was the first time that we have like a semi-formalized way of coming together and see if a specific sequence of interaction is working between consumers and providers. However, at that time, we were tremendously struggling with the certificate handling before we could even start exchanging a single bit of medical data. Yeah, but that was only the first Blockathon. We continued in March 2021 with a second Blockathon. The certificate issues were mostly gone, and we had some issues with SSL 1.2 and 1.3, running into some incompatibilities, but that's only like things that will definitely not remain for long. And we started setting up an interoperability metrics that was new on the second Blockathon. Before that, we were just trying to get the sequence up and running. And now we were at a point where we tried to conserve the information of which consumer provider pair was able to successfully interconnect and exchange data. Yeah, and we can also just have a quick glimpse at the HL7 website. You will see that under the community engagement, there is the community events, and below that we have the different Blockathons that are, where we have records of what works and what doesn't work. We see that in the second Blockathon interoperability metrics, which was the first one. Quite sketchy. We have just some green bubbles here. There were 9 test steps specified at the time we conducted the Blockathon, with some green boxes, like, for example, obviously implementations from one vendor against itself passed most of the times. And we had some green boxes, for example, between the SDC 11073 Python implementation against the SDC reference implementation implemented in Java.
So this is huge, because just looking at this, you see both the diversity of the vendors, but especially the diversity of implementations. So it's not like everybody is using Java or everybody's using C++. So that is huge. What was the reaction, by the way, of the participants actually now seeing this matrix? Was this a good thing, or were they like, oh my, this is getting serious?
No, I think this was a wonderful idea for the participants. They were pretty happy about it, because now we were able to just protocol our progress, because before that we were always like having like a whiteboard where we just scribble down something, and that information got lost once the Blockathon, or back then the
So the next day you go back to the shop and they say, how did it go? Great. What did you do?
Exactly. And that's definitely a tremendous problem. And that's what we, by means of this conference page, we're able to tackle and definitely make an improvement. So this helped a lot. And it's even better, because if we look at the next Blockathon And for the sake of just keeping that open, I can now quickly go over to the second interoperability matrix, because for regression testing, we kind of introduce a new, fresh, clean slate interoperability matrix from each Plugathon to each Plugathon, so that we get an idea of if we lost interoperability capabilities or if we want something. And if we look from Plugathon number 2 to Plugathon number 3, we see that there is a lot of green stuff in here. And we definitely make progress from one Plugathon to the next. And it looks like, except for some pretty new implementations, pretty new vendors, that we gained a lot of
green.
tests. Yeah, a lot of green and almost no yellow and no red. Yeah, that's good news. And I think, with the upcoming 4th Plugathon, we will definitely be able to close on that interoperability matrix, at least for the vendors and implementations that we see here, maybe except for this new participant here. But yeah, that's just up to those vendor, or in that case, the Vector Informatics, a provider of testing infrastructure.
And then what you were going to do, David, before I interrupted you, was for the number 2 matrix at the bottom, you were just going to show the beginnings of the test sequence.
Yes.
I think it's underneath there. So why don't you pick up there again?
Yes, we see that below. So this is just a list of test steps, pretty informal. There's not really, we didn't really specify details of what we have to exchange, what has to be visible and stuff like that. It was only about the different, more or less life cycle step of an SDC connection. And it's definitely missing something. It's missing the shutdown at the end. We didn't do that in the first stage. But we formalized it with our second edition of the test steps. And we see this is about discovering devices. This is about retrieving the MDIP of a provider, subscribing information, making sure that information is delivered. If we look at 5, 6, and 7, and in one of the last items we have, it's point number 9, the verification of external control invocations. And if we then go over to our latest edition of the test sequence, we can also see that there is a lot of evolution and revolution. If I find it's over here, it's reference provider consumer. Not only that we drop the certificates to just make them available for all the participants, we also defined an MDIP that is like a reference provider that we test against with different implementations. Later on, we have to exchange those MDIPs by the MDIPs that have been specified by different vendors, and they are then vendor specific. But for now, we are going with this artificial piece of work. Then coming up with an expected behavior, like the device has to send a hello, has to answer to probes, it has to provide the MDIP to the consumers, it has to provide metric updates, at least 5 metrics. 5 metric updates in 30 seconds, the same for alert conditions. So this is pretty basic, but it gives us an idea of as a consumer what we have to test. And also in the operations part, that there has to be like different operations, and those up on request have to be answered with a finished.
So simple beginnings, but a good starting point, especially for those who are just coming up to speed on SDC and SDPi. This is excellent.
Absolutely. And then we still have some questions pending that we might clarify. Always, which we might answer during one of the next Plugathons. So we definitely have a lot to do, like talking about the different roles that will be introduced with the upcoming PKPs, the participant key purposes of the 11073, together with alert system self-checks, for example. We don't have that in our test sequence. And we also missed to come up with waveform handling, which is pretty similar to what we have with metric updates in general, but it's just some information that is delivered on a higher frequency than is typically the case for metrics and alerts. And then below there's the reference consumer, also a more sophisticated description where we have also a mapping to the transactions from the SDPi supplement. And we just detailed those steps and give some more information, like, for example, as a discovery provider with a specific endpoint reference address, you have to answer the probe messages, you have to answer the resolve messages and see that those has been answered correctly and so forth. And it's basically the same steps garnished with some more information. And additionally, we have step number 10 that just says, okay, we have to make sure that our shutdown works properly. That means we are closing all the connections and we get the subscriptions, the running subscriptions canceled. Going back to that guy here. So this was basically more or less an anticipation of Blockathon 3 as well. And additionally to what we've done to the interoperability metrics, which is creating a lot of green boxes, we also came up with a Docker container that we plan to use to be able to do some offline testing, so that we don't have to necessarily come together as a team at the Plugathons, but also be able to just start up some random implementation or device simulator in between the connectathons and Plugathons. This is a Docker container that basically runs a VPN adapter that connects to the Ornet Soft Ether VPN. And then this container can be used as a base for further decoration with, for example, an SDCRI test consumer or a test provider. And you can start up that the Docker container independent of your local environment and try to run against that with your individual personal implementation.
So as you say here, we'll pull together some slides before Plugathon number 4, and this obviously will support pre-connectathons. This is Plugathon, but this approach would support pre-connectathon testing, where I'm bringing a system and I want to be able to test it, to see, well, how far am I able to get before I try testing it with other systems. So that is excellent. In advance of that slide set, can you just take 30 seconds and give a little bit of context for what Docker is? Where does it come from? What's it related to? For those who aren't familiar with that.
Oh yeah, sure. So me myself, I'm not a Docker expert. So Docker is just
neither am I.
Yeah, it's as it is, but I think I have a little idea of what it's meant to be used for. So Docker containers are basically a pick and mix technology where I have an isolated image and I can use this image and combine it to like a complex virtual environment that I can then run, and it's been run like a virtual machine on my computer, and I don't have all the effects of a local system that can influence this virtual machine or the application that I run. And this is like a sandbox. It's basically a sandbox that can be configured very well. And a Docker container is like one of the building blocks that can be stacked up and eventually turn out to be a virtual machine that provides a certain set of functionality.
And to be sure, if anybody wants to know more, it's on Wikipedia.
Yeah, it is.
So go for it.
We have a very big community around the Docker. It's one of the most famous technologies nowadays because it allows us to like pick and mix different different artifacts with different functionality and run them as a virtual machine, and you can reproduce results in running software, which is quite nice. And yeah, it scales up very well. So multiple reasons that Docker is a very suitable technology. We can also leverage for our purposes. Yeah, and then there is the next Blockathon, which will hopefully take place in August 2021. As we facing summertime in Germany, and summertime means summer vacation, it's quite questionable if it will be able, or if we are getting to critical mass of attendees to actually conduct this event. But yeah, I'm confident and I'm crossing fingers that this will be possible. Otherwise, we would postpone it to, I guess, sometime in September or beginning of October, depending on when the last vacation or it's like in Germany, we have this interlacing vacation time so that we don't have so much congestion on the German Autobahn. And it starts, I think, in the northern part of Germany. We are now in the vacation time, and then it goes down to the southern part of Germany, and they get into summer vacation. I think in August, and that's the reason why there might be some people being on vacation at the time the next Blockathon would potentially take place.
Excellent.
But from the perspective of what we are planning next, we will definitely focus on the detailing of the test sequences. They definitely have to get better, because one of the things that we noticed during the third Blockathon was that at some point the definition of the test sequence wasn't good enough to get a green box, so to say, just because of the lack of information from the test sequence and not because of the implementation that was wrong. That's the reason why we definitely have to improve the test sequence details. And yeah, also we have to talk about the SDPi transactions and see how we can map that generically. And the idea is that by the time of the next Blockathon, or between the number 4 and number 5 Blockathon, we come up with some sort of a test application that we can run isolated from our normal implementations, and then test against this test app, or run this test app as a test artifact that generates JUnit outputs that we later on can use for the connectathons at a report generator, and transform it to something that can be digested by, for example, Gazelle, if I'm right.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's the plan for Blockathon number 4, and if we don't manage it, then for Blockathon number 5. And other than that, we are also going to, once that the interoperability matrix is green, focus on more enhanced topics, like, for example, the alarm distribution, which we are also very interested in finalizing an approach that is actually feasible.
So in all of this, the idea was to kind of set up these Plugathons every other month. Of course, as you said, there's holidays and there's other things, but that's what we're trying to do. And it lays the foundation for the more formal connectathon testing. In connectathon testing, you actually look at a specific IHE profile, set of transactions, and you have them formally tested and formally graded, pass, fail. And so we're hoping to be able to do maybe a virtual one later this year, but definitely in 2022. And all of that leads up. So the Plugathons are the humble beginnings of testing things out, developing the tools, the test scripts, all of that for the connectathons, but ultimately product conformity assessment, so that we're able to actually do testing of products in advance of them being placed into use, into the market and into patient use. So this is really important, although it's informal and kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward. Can't wait to have that, being in a productive environment, being able to actually do some kind of conformance testing and yeah, see what the results are be. Okay, and I think I'm almost done. We have some more challenges as always. There is, yeah, like we have to find an appropriate solution, yeah, for which is figuring out how to test devices that are consumers. So typically we have like a device under test, and this device under test is a real device, and we have to kind of yeah, establish some message exchanges and see if those message exchanges worked as expected. And if I am, as a test app, a consumer, and I'm accessing a provider, which is the device under test, it's no problem. I can just, as you can see, run a specific test sequence, record the results, and push that out as a test result. And then on the other side, we are facing the issue that once the device under test is a consumer, how can we record anything that is from a provider without having a specific feedback loop back to the client or back to the consumer, so that we can trigger specific behavior and then test against the message exchange. That's something that we still have to find out the best way to do that. And yeah, still something that is up on our list.
And on a related note, we also have the further complexity of many systems end up being provider consumers. And so how do you test a given system or product in a consistent way when it's kind of a mix of these? So fun topics. And absolutely. I might say, so this is you know, this is a presentation, as you can see at the bottom, you originally made on the 11th of June. But we have then in the SDPi Fire project continued this discussion. And we actually have twice a month, the first and third Thursdays, I think, of the month, we have a conformity assessment and tooling meeting for this project where we take these topics up. So we're actively discussing these in between the Plugathons.
Absolutely, it definitely doesn't get lost. Okay, yeah, and with those words, I finished the presentation, and thanks for the attention, and for everyone who's watching that on YouTube or wherever, thanks for staying with me to the end of the slide set.
And I noticed you left off your mobile phone number from this last slide, or even your email.
Yes.
How handy. But we will definitely have this available on the Confluence site. We have, why don't you pull up that page? Can you show that one more time? And we have
going back.
a new site. What is it? It's towards the top. There's a everything, a library. So that library page right up there. Yep. Where we have all sorts of these videos. It's a like everything on Confluence, it's a work in progress, but we'll post it up here, and you'll be able to look at there. And maybe I'll include a link to post the amazing David and a message to him. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay. You have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.